Welcome, y'all. It's Wes with DIY Food Plot Pro. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's episode, we're talking about how to have bulletproof plots every single year. As a food plot channel and a consultant, I have many people reach out to me every single week talking about food plots, sharing their experiences, their successes, and some of their failures with me. And we talk often about how do we have quality food plots on the farms every year without fail. I wanted to go make a video explaining exactly how we do this and exactly how we have high quality food sources for the whitetails year round and to get them to reach that full potential that they possibly can. One of the biggest factors in having a successful food plot is matching your environmental factors with the food plot that you're raising, and that cannot be overstated enough. You have to look at your environment. You have to decide what food plots will do best in your area and what food plots are really out of the realm of what you can plant in your area. A perfect example of this is when we're looking at soils to plant food plots on. Say something like alfalfa. We want to plant alfalfa. We want to get that high protein for 10 months out of the year. Those whitetails really utilize. And we're looking for suitable sites for alfalfa. So what are we looking for? Well, when we go back to the alfalfa crop, we know that it likes drier conditions. It also is a must that soil drains. It also needs a pH of 7.0. It needs high P and K levels, and it's a high level of management. By looking at that crop profile, we can pretty much narrow down what fields that's going to do well on and what fields that's going to be a complete disaster trying to plant that on. So any field that is a little wet, that holds moisture really well, that's going to be a negative for alfalfa. Any soil pH that's 5.5 or lower without significant amounts of lime on that plot, that's going to be a negative. So a lot of times we can look at the environmental factors of all these food plots and decide which plots fit best for us. As many of you know, I love standing corn, standing beans. They are great food plots, but I'm well aware that many parts of the U.S., planting corn is going to be a disaster most years. Most of you know I farm for a living, so I'm looking when I'm out here in these food plots trying to decide what's going to work, what's not. There are so many factors that go in to what food plots go here. So if I wanted to plant corn on this field, I'm looking at annual rainfall, average temperature throughout the growing season. I'm looking at deer density. I'm looking at the nutrient availability, the soil analysis. All those things play into what I can plant here. So deer density is probably the number one factor of what food plots can go where. So if you're in an area where you have 1,000 acres of woods behind you and you've got an acre here in the very center of it, very little food, it's wide open timber, there's not a lot of food on the ground, going into that 1 acre plot with a high density deer zone and trying to plant something like soybeans is going to be a fail very often. That's something that is not going to work out in your favor most years. Now, everybody can have one of those years where it rains every single day, we're getting plenty of warmth, and our soybeans can kind of outgrow that deer browse. But most years, that's going to be an uphill battle trying to plant something like a soybean in a small plot with high density deer zone. Same thing goes for corn. If you plant a half-acre spot in corn, you're not only going to have the deer to deal with, but you're going to have the coons that are going to get in there. You're going to have the squirrels. All animals love corn. So when you plant corn, you have to understand if you are planting this around a wooded area, that more than likely the first 12 to 18 rows of that corn will be null and void. And that really works out well for us anyway, because that's a good area that we can go back in before a good rain. We can knock that corn over. We can spread our annual clovers and our brassicas and our cereal grains in there, and we can get that diversity on that food plot that we're all looking for. But if you have a small area and you don't have anything but about 18 rows around, say 36 rows all total, by the time hunting season gets here, the chances of you actually having any corn to hunt over are slim to none. Matching the deer density to the plot that you're wanting to raise is absolutely critical. Now, it can absolutely be done. We can protect these plots. We've done it many times on the episodes before. Electric fencing, scarecrows, you get creative, and you can absolutely keep these deer out of these plots enough to raise these plots. But it's hard to do, it's time consuming, but you absolutely can do it. That's just something you need to know before you decide to try one of those plots. I think the biggest thing that separates people who often have food plot failures and people who most of the time have a successful food plot is a backup plan. Many folks reach out on the channel and they say, I only plant a fall mix. That's totally fine. I'm not dogging anybody or trying to take anybody down. In my opinion, the more chances that I get at having a successful food plot, the better odds I have of succeeding, right? So when I start out with my spring plot, I'm planting corn, I'm planting soybeans. If it makes it, wonderful. I get corn or soybeans out there with my food plot. I'm also going to go back and add that diversity that I talked about earlier. If it doesn't make it, then all of a sudden I'm coming back in the late summer, early fall, and I'm going to add my annual clovers and my brassicas, my turnips and my radishes. That's what I'm going to add, okay? So that's 2 chances that I've got. Let's say we have a terrible drought like we did last year, and we don't get any of our brassicas or our clovers to come up. Well, then all of a sudden we have a 3rd chance to make this plot right by planting oats, cereal rye, winter wheat, depending on where you're at in the country. We can add those cereal grains to these plots. We have given ourselves 3 different chances to succeed. Many times food plotting is an uphill road because we are trying to control factors that we can't control, such as rainfall, temperature, things like that. We can't really control those things. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to come out here and we're hoping it's going to rain and make that corn. But if it doesn't, okay, say heck with the corn, we're going to put the brassicas and the clovers in. If they don't make it, then we've got the cereal grains to fall back on. You always have something to fall back on. That's what I really don't like about adding just fall food plots, because oftentimes where I'm at, and I know in the Southeast especially, there are many times in the fall where we're very, very, very dry, and it can be very difficult to get those seeds germed up when you don't have any soil moisture. And that's the case with us this fall, is our soil was completely baked dry. So any rain that we would get might germ the seed up, get it going, but then as soon as the root gets down an inch or 2, it's out of moisture and the plant's withering and suffering, trying to withstand and hold on to that next rainfall that may or may not come. So what I like to do is I like to add these plots in 3 different stages. That way I always have something for these whitetails in case the spring's a disaster, the late summer's a disaster, or the fall's a disaster. We always have food sources for these whitetails. It may not be the most preferred that we really, really want, but we can do this because we are trying 3 different times to get what we need to help these whitetails and give them all the food that they need. And I think that is just absolutely critical when we're planning our food plots, is to have that backup plan. I have a carryover of seed that I keep as backup for when these plots fail, if they fail. Now, most of them don't fail because we are planning on the front end of this thing, and we're planning for the scarecrows, and we're planning for the deer, and we're matching the environments that we have with the food plots that we have, and we are planning for soil nutrients. We're throwing a lot of fertilizer to this ground to get these plants up and going as best they possibly can. But even doing all those things, a drought can make somebody who looks like they know what they're doing, it can make them look stupid in a heartbeat. And a rainy year can make somebody who has no idea what they're doing, make them look like they're the best food plotter in the United States. A lot of the conditions that we're facing are just completely out of our control. All we can do is do the best that we can do and try to have a backup plan in place in case this plot fails. We're gonna go back to plan B or to plan C or to plan D, and we're gonna get this food on the food plot for the whitetails. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please smash that like and subscribe button.